When we got to the sandbar, the first step was getting our bearings, understanding what the approach was going to be, where we were landing, and what our go-around procedure would look like.
If you look here, there's that lip. That's the end of the runway, and there's like some little chunks of grass that look like dots just after the lip.
Yep.
So that's really the end of your runway. You can see
so
where people.
We're high right now.
Yeah, we're a little high.
Okay.
Yep.
Are we making left traffic or right?
We'll make a right turn down the river and then left traffic.
Okay, so we'd be slower and lower right now.
Yep, right in here.
Yeah.
We come in, we would drag our spot. So right here will be our low pass.
Okay.
All right, and then we could start our shallow right turn.
I'm Charlie, and I'm flying with TAC Aero, an elite backcountry flight school in Texas that specializes in landing at places just like this river sandbar. Throughout the day, we were practicing short field technique and spot landings to help me land on sand for the first time. I'll share more of these lessons learned later in the video, but for now, after the low approach you just saw, we came back in for a drag, which is basically just trying to drag the main gear down the runway to get a feel for how soft it is and decide whether or not you can land.
And this will be a drag, so we'll try to put it on the mains first time, and we'll drag as far as we can, and then do another go around.
Okay. Keep slowing it up. Pretty high, huh?
Yeah, and give yourself some room. You know what I mean? Don't rush yourself. That's one thing people like to do is get in a big rush. This is your first time, so give yourself some room and get yourself in there close to those trees. That way you got plenty of room to work with down low.
Okay. Is sand like a lot spongier than grass?
It's not. I mean, it's not a whole lot different.
Okay.
It's still pretty solid.
Okay. Oh, there's like 50.
Yeah, it's looking really nice.
Okay.
And of course, as you get closer to this contour, just kind of throttle back a little bit, let the airplane settle down over the top of these trees. Very nice. Beautiful. Little bumps coming over that river.
Yep.
Very good, very good. Beautiful. Little power here. All right, let's go ahead and start our go-around.
Okay. I didn't drag it very long
No,
there.
not very long, but that's okay. Go ahead and bring in full power. We'll continue our go-around here and keep climbing. Let's get the flaps, start coming up with those.
Oh, that was really fun.
Pretty sweet, huh? You know, it wasn't bad. The only thing was once you touched, you could have come back on the power a little bit more after we got it in the drag, and kept it on the ground.
Man, my heart was really pumping during all this. I mean, looking back at the video, I think I seemed pretty focused because I was, but inside, I know I was pumped and nervous all at the same time. I mean, 800 feet looks like a lot on camera, but in real life, it looked way shorter than that. And so I was hyper focused trying to land slow and land short.
Okay, get rid of that power. And basically a 3-point. Stick the tail. Beautifully done, beautifully done.
The technique we were practicing throughout the day that led us up to this moment had two main parts, and they were both really fun to practice. First, it's flying a slow, stabilized approach and aiming for a certain touchdown spot on the runway. Basically, you're doing a spot landing. And admittedly, spot landings are pretty easy when you're doing it on a big paved runway and maybe your spot is just 1,000-foot markers or something because there's no obstacles. You have so much room, but it gets a lot more challenging whenever you're actually doing the real thing in a short landing environment, and there might be obstacles on both ends. I really took it for granted how difficult really nailing your spot could actually be. The main thing I was getting wrong earlier in the day was that on my approach, I was basically aiming for the target spot, and then I would just float right past it. Now that might sound obvious, but the first big light bulb for me was to aim at something before the spot if you actually want to hit your spot. I mean, duh, right? But when you're in the plane and it's all happening quickly and your spot is pretty early on the runway, it's actually harder than it sounds and there's a bit of a learning curve. The second part of the short field landing technique we were working on was to not only try to hit your spot, but try to hit your spot with the stall warning going off in 3-point landing configuration and also not bounce. Throughout the day, I was getting better at hitting the spot, basically part number 1, but then I found there is so much finesse needed to really nail this part 2. You really have to have the perfect amount of energy where you're at stall speed and you're not floating past your spot, but you're also not stalling it and dropping it onto the ground in the flare and then bouncing and extending your landing roll. You could have the perfect approach and still screw it up in the last 5 seconds. So this gave me so much respect for the guys that can fly the airplane right on that edge. And we weren't literally trying to land that slow. I mean, that's like a whole nother level. But here's my instructor, Ian, explaining the technique we were going for while we were on the ground.
As we flare, even though we can sort of flare the aircraft, decelerate, our energy wants to go in this direction, not in this direction. And that's why we'll often say it's more of an arrival than a perfect landing, but we kind of want that. We want the aircraft to touch down firm, but not hard. You don't want to bounce, but you want to have a nice firm landing. Your momentum is traveling vertically and you have less momentum and energy moving forward.
Ian's cool composure and sweet South African accent make it sound simple, but when you're doing it in real life, it feels like everything is happening in those last few seconds and it's difficult to get it right. It's what makes it really challenging, but honestly, it also makes it really fun.
Nice.
I highly recommend you go watch the full video I did with Tac Aero. It's by far the most challenging video I've ever made from a production standpoint, and I'm really proud of it. But more importantly, I think it could be a really helpful tool for you as I share the full process and I don't hide any of the mistakes that I made. So that video is on the screen right now, and I'll see you there.